You tell these fools I'm not crazy! Make them listen to me before it's too late! Listen to me. Please listen. If you don't, if you won't, if you fail to understand, then the same incredible terror that's menacing me will strike at you!
They come from another world, spawned in the light years of space, unleashed to take over the bodies and souls of the people of our planet, bringing a new dimension in terror to the giant superscope screen.
It's whatever intelligence or instinct it is that can govern the forming of human flesh and blood out of thin air is fantastically powerful, beyond any comprehension.
A cursed, dreadful, malevolent thing was happening to those he loved.
This isn't just an ordinary body, is it?
I never saw one like it. It looks unused.
The sensational star discovery of The View from Pompey's Head. And now an undreamed of horror makes her life and love a vortex of fear.
Jack!
Miles, where do they come from?
I don't know.
Suddenly, while you're asleep, they'll absorb your minds, your memories.
I don't want any part of it.
You're forgetting something, Miles.
What's that?
You have no choice.
From city to city, an incredible, hysterical panic spreads. As the unimaginable becomes real, the impossible becomes true.
Stop and listen! Stop and listen to me! Listen! Listen! Listen to me! They're not human! Can't you see? Everyone! They're here already! You're next!
Hi, everybody, and welcome once again to GeekFest Rants. My name is Carlos Perrone, and today I have Mike Sutton joining me. Say hi, Mike.
Hey, Mike.
Well, whenever I get together with Mike, whether it's in person or on the phone now, we are actually connected via phone line. We usually try to hit the classics. And what do you think we mean by the classics? Well, we're talking about horror, sci-fi from like the 50s and the 60s, I guess, the 70s even, I guess, all that old stuff that somehow finds its way to today in terms of some of these films being remade, some of these films being reimagined. And the one we're hitting today is probably one of the granddaddies of them all, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Now, this is a film that has been remade a number of times. We're going to talk about some of those remakes, the more obvious big ones, because a lot of times, I know Mike has experienced this before, you take something like the Sci-Fi Channel or some of these other cable channels and they do their own version of it or straight to video versions of, classic films, and you're like, which is it? Is this an official remake or is this some kind of weird rip-off remake? No, we're going to stick to the the major ones. But why don't you tell us a little bit about the plot, because it's different, and it's a film that kind of stayed with everybody. It's kind of like you can't just kind of shoo it away in terms of, just another one of these cheesy 50s films. No. First of all, it's a great film the way that it was made. The story is very smart. And it, like I said, it stays. It stays. It has longevity as far as I'm concerned. So, Mike, tell us a little bit about the plot of Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Well, the plot's kind of simple. It's alien pods, or I think there's different reincarnations out there, but the whole point is the human race is being replaced one by one by clones, but they have no emotion. So they look and they act like your mother, your brother, your sister, your friends, but there's just no emotion. And that's what seems one of the common things through all the movies, and that's what helps people identify that, hey, something's wrong. Like, that's not my mother. It looks like my mother, but something's off. And, of course, the heroes who discover what's going on, and they're trying to stop the invasion.
Right, and part of the movie, like most movies, I guess it's the discovery phase of trying to figure out what is going on, and then trying to figure out, what's happening, and then trying to convince other people of what's happening, and then they get to the point where They can't convince people, so they have to just basically run away and get away from it. Now, the movie, like we just mentioned, it goes through these different phases. The movie, just to take a step back, comes from a book of the same name, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, by Jack Finney. And recently, maybe about a year ago, I read the book. I don't remember where I got it from, but I was like, oh, this is an interesting, it's one of those things where you like a certain movie and all of a sudden you realize, oh, it's based on something that was written. So I remember started reading the book, and it is very, very true to the script in terms of all the different beats and all the different parts of the story. They're all in the book, except, and again, we're going to talk spoilers because these films are, come on, this film is over 50 years old. If I'm spoiling it for you, what are you going to do? But the movie...
It's not spoiling it, it's trying to intrigue you to watch it.
Exactly. The movie, the original black and white film, starts out with Kevin McCarthy, the star of the movie. He kind of stumbles into a doctor's office and he's telling the police the story about this weird thing that happened to him. And then you watch the entire movie, and then the movie ends with him back in that office again, kind of recapping everything that happened and the movie ending at that point. The book doesn't have that. The book doesn't have that beginning and that end. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about, is the fact that even for the movie, that intro and outro to the whole movie was something that was added apparently at the last minute by the studio. The makers of the film, the director, Don Siegel, they shot the movie in a certain way, again, very truthful, almost faithful to the book, starting with the doctor comes to town and starts to notice these weird things. There was no pre-scene of him, but they felt that, people are going to be a little bored or a little confused, and we wanted to kind of line it up a little bit because it was a little too scary or whatever, so they wanted to give it kind of like a happy ending, if you will.
Well, it wasn't, the original didn't have a happy ending.
Well,
it left it open for a big sequel.
Yeah, but compared to... Let me put it this way. Compared to what they did on some of the sequels or the remakes, it's a lot happier than some of the other ones. And let's get very specific here. The book ends with them being chased. They're the two last people in town that are not turned into, pods and aliens or whatever. And they're being chased and they kind of hide. And then almost like in another film we talked about a while back, War of the Worlds, right when you think it's over and they're going to get killed, the aliens mysteriously say, okay, we give up. The humans they fight too much. They're too resistant to ours. We're going to just kind of float away back into space and pollinate another planet. And that's how the book ends, which is kind of like, that's kind of like a weak ending as far as I'm concerned. The movie, why don't you tell us, how it differs? How does it end?
Yeah, the ending of the original, Kevin McCarthy's character, after he's finished telling the whole story, and again, he's trying to convince the police that all these events have happened and he has no proof, until I think it's either he's walking out of the room and then it's like another police officer and he's like, oh yeah, what's going on? Oh, there was just a big accident over at I-94. Oh, what's happened? Oh no, these giant sea pods, these things fell out on the road, they're all over the place.
Dun dun dun.
Dun dun dun. Yeah, that's when everybody looks and they said, he is telling the truth.
There you go.
That's when it's like, get the president on the phone or the local authorities or something.
Right.
And that's how it ends, where they believe him finally, and
right, it's a hopeful ending.
It's a hopeful ending.
Right. The original film, when it was shot, apparently, the movie ends with him in the highway screaming, they're coming for you, they're coming for you. That classic scene of him screaming like a madman. And that's where the movie was supposed to end. But again, the studios felt it was too dark of an ending, too depressing, too much of a downer. So that's why they added that little beginning and ending that, like we just said, gives you a little more hope for humanity, I guess. But yeah, compared to the book, like I said, it's different. It's I don't know. It's just so weird how the movie is so true to the book, but then the book, in my opinion, kind of falls apart at the end by having such a easy, happy, the aliens went home. Which I think, didn't we kind of talk about that with War of the Worlds? That, they finally almost killed everybody and then they dropped dead.
Yeah, they all just died. All at the same time.
Well,
it was convenient.
I know, and I'm glad they changed it. I'm glad that they didn't go that way. And it's funny because I always picture the film, I didn't know about that the studios were the ones responsible for that little tag ending and tag beginning. I always picture the film as it being what it was, what it's always been. But no, apparently, I don't know if anybody has their hands on it. There is a cut of the film. And if you think about it, the cut of the film is just a matter of snipping the beginning and the end, where it starts the way it, with him coming to town, and it ends with him screaming at traffic. So it's interesting that they went in that direction. Now, Mike, I know you're a big fan also of soundtracks. What did you think of the music for this one?
It was good. I enjoyed it. I haven't listened to the soundtrack for a while. It's a little creepy type music. Nothing spectacular. I mean, it was done by a gentleman, Carmen Dragon. He was the film composer, and he worked in Hollywood for a while, but he never really did anything really big and popular and that everybody knows, but he did work for a long time. I enjoyed it. Again, I'll be honest, I haven't listened to it for a while, and I failed my homework assignment. I should have listened to it before we did the podcast.
Well, we looked up his name to see, what other huge hits he had, and I really don't remember or notice, anything that huge that I could say, oh yeah, he did this or that. Because a lot of these older guys, when you see their resume, they're usually like a mile long of all these classic movies they've done. This guy really hasn't done anything that we would recognize.
Yeah, he didn't do a whole lot other than maybe Dr. Kildare. He did a couple episodes, the Colgate Comedy Hour.
Oh, okay. I guess he's more a TV guy, maybe.
That's something with TV, but really it comes to movies. Unfortunately, some of these movies I've never heard of, but When in Rome, The People Against O'Hara, The Law and the Lady. But again, it's just the point, it's not something that these huge movies that just jump out and everybody knows their names.
Another thing about the film I remember, I think even from high school or even college, that another reason why this is to be considered to be an important film or above average film is because this film has that whole thing about the Red Menace. And we talked about this again when it comes with the Blob. We talked about the Blob a while back. This is a period in history, American history anyway, where everybody's being terrified of communism and it's being, it's coming for you and they look just like you. The Blob was the Red Menace, the big red blob coming at you. And this film is credited, incredibly enough, incorrectly credited, but credited nonetheless with this representing the communists, takeover of the world. These people that, you got to be careful because they look like you and they sound like you. But they're not. They're these careless atheists, unfeeling people that are taking over the world. And what's interesting is that some of the comments I read is that not only do the filmmakers claim that they never had that in mind when they put the film together. It wasn't a secret message, for people. It wasn't supposed to be, double meanings or anything. And even the writer of the book claims the same thing. So it's one of these situations where people have applied a certain meaning to a film, not so much based on fact, but based on the era and the time that this film just kind of coincides with that kind of thing. I think, and that, that's pretty interesting. Another weird little trivia fact, Sam Peckinpah, the director of The Wild Bunch, has a small part as an actor in this film as the meter reader, which, again, I had no idea that he was an actor at some point. I thought he was just a director. And I couldn't tell you by looking at him like, oh, yeah, that's Sam Peckinpah. No, I would never have known that. But it's a weird little, trivia bit. Kevin McCarthy is an actor that I was able to meet him at one of the conventions I used to go back in the 80s. And I remember, that was his claim to fame. Everywhere he went, he was known for Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Then he got a little extra street cred because he was in the Twilight Zone movie. He was one of the episodes in there. But, do you remember him from anything else?
Unfortunately, yeah, Invasion of the Body Snatchers is up to the top of my list.
Now, I don't know if you can call this a remake or a sequel, because when they made the second version of this film, and by that I'm talking about the 1978 Philip Kaufman directed, with Donald Sutherland as the lead character, and Jeff Goldblum is in it, Leonard Nimoy, Mr. Spock, like you said. Kevin McCarthy has a scene in the beginning of him screaming at traffic, kind of warning people that something is coming. And again, I'm not sure if that's supposed to be how tied do you think that's supposed to be to this film, or do you think it's just like an homage?
Oh, I think it was an homage. It was, knowing that he's still around and when people realize that that's Kevin McCarthy who was in the original.
But it's funny because could you make that connection that in a way it's kind of like what the original cut of the film would have been, of him never making it to that police station or that hospital, wherever the heck he's at, and the film ending with him screaming and then picking up right there in a different town with, people realizing something weird's going on. Now, that second film, the 78 one, I watched that one recently, and that's actually funny because I was, as usual, I'm going through Netflix, and all of a sudden it's like, there's Invasion of the Body, but it's a remake. I don't know if I should watch it. And then I'm like, wait a minute, wasn't Nimoy in that? It's like, let's take a look. And that's a really creepy film. It has the usual beats of the classic, obviously, but it takes place in the late 70s. So, the styles are different. The actors, people are a little different and stuff. But it's a little more graphic also. I remember the creatures, as they change and as they kind of decompose, it's pretty graphic. So I think that sequel probably doesn't get enough respect because the classic is such a classic. I mean, do you remember seeing it? Did you see it in the theater or video? Or do you have any clue? Because it's 78. I don't know what you were up to in 78.
Oh, 78. Let's see. You were after Star Wars. I probably saw that on TV. I know I saw it several times. I might have seen it in the theater. I don't remember. Honestly, I don't remember it being that graphic. Saying, oh, look, Mr. Spock is in it, and Donald Sutherland.
I remember, again, because I saw it recently, I remember some of those transformation effects because, again, you're dealing in pre-CGI age, a lot of practical, and they do kind of remind me a little bit of John Carpenter's The Thing. There was a lot of that practical effect of, animatronics and faces being stretched and changed and bubbling things up. For its time, it's like, wow, that's pretty edgy, scary-looking transformations.
The thing I always remember about that movie was if the aliens, if we want to call them aliens, but now the new clone alien, if they saw you and they realized you were not one of them, they would do that high-pitched scream.
Yes.
And they would point.
Well, that's the classic ending of that film, and you can see it. You can go to YouTube and watch it. It's Donald Sutherland, finally, even the last man gets caught at the end. And you don't realize it until he does that scream because he's approached by somebody. He's like, oh, you made it. Oh, I made it too. That kind of, and then he turns around and gives that scream and points at that person, pointing them out for everyone to come and get him. But yeah, talk about a downer. This is a film that they really went all the way with the dark ending. There is no hope ending, basically. It's they took over and there's just nothing you can do. Everybody's got to fall asleep at some point, and when they wake up, they're already been replaced. I think this is probably the darkest of all of the 4 versions of the film that we're going to talk about. The next one up was in 1993. It was called Body Snatchers. Now, this film is probably the least known of all of them, of the 4. The only known name, somewhat known to, if you're a film nerd, the director, Abel Ferrer, who directed this film. His claim to fame was, he did a couple of films. One of them, I think, was called King of New York, which was with Christopher Walken. Very gritty crime film. And the other one was the biggest one he had, which is a very controversial film called Bad Lieutenant, which it's a rough film, a very difficult film to watch. It propelled Harvey Keitel back into the business, really. He was kind of fading out. That film, because it was so controversial, kind of brought him back in. And, it kind of, in a way, I think led to him then moving to, Pulp Fiction and some other stuff. But this is another version of the film. Instead of taking place in a city, in a small town. Now, granted, the previous one took place in a bigger city. I think it was San Francisco. I could be wrong. The first one, the original, takes place like in a small American town. But this third one takes place at a military base. And it's basically a military family moves into the base. And the older girl, with her little brother and her parents, she starts to notice something's going on. Some people are acting weird. Once again, it's a couple of years later. The effects are even more graphic than before. Kind of creepy, pretty creepy. It follows the same beats, First you try to convince people, then you figure out what's going on, try to convince people. Nobody believes you. Everybody comes after you. You have to just run and get away from it. This particular one ends with her getting away, I think, with one of the soldiers. I think in the process she loses most of her family, but they kind of come back in a helicopter and start blowing up the whole naval base or something like that. So I think it kind of harkens back to the original, where even though they are defeated, they are able to come back and try to take out that town or try to notify the authorities of what's happening, to kind of help. It doesn't give you a definitive happy ending, but it's a happier ending than the previous one. The last version that I can remember, and now, did you see the one I just talked about, or have you ever seen that one, Mike?
I have seen that. I haven't seen that in a long time. And I always vaguely remember the movie poster, like the face splits or something.
Yeah, it's like a face splitting in two almost.
Yeah, but I haven't seen that in a long time. And actually, I just went on IMDb, folks, and I didn't realize Forrest Whitaker was in there.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He's he's the doctor. He's a doctor. He's like a psychiatrist or something. He was pretty good in it. And I think Meg Tilly is in one of these films too.
Yep. Meg Tilly was, the mother?
Yeah, and she's super creepy. Man, is she creepy in this one. She's a creepy actress to begin with, but she's like extra creepy on this one. The third one, which you might be a little more familiar because it's more current and it was a little more popular, even though it was basically another bomb. Body Snatchers was considered a bomb. It didn't make much money. You could almost call it an art film because, like I said before, that director, Abel Ferrara, he's more of an art director. He's considered to be an artsy type of guy. The third one is called The Invasion, which, okay, I guess they're trying to work the title in any possible combination that they can. And this one, it's funny because it's almost like you forget this is a remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. This one stars Nicole Kidman as the lead doctor, let's say, and Daniel Craig, James Bond himself, trying to convince, they're trying to, again, goes to the same beach. He's got a son and the people are falling asleep and they're being overtaken. But in this one, I don't think you're dealing with pod people. I think people are falling asleep and they're becoming other people. They kind of turn into other people. So by the end of this film, I believe it, again, she's able to notify the government and they believe her and they come and rescue and they're able to figure out a way of reversing whatever the hell it is that's happening.
Yeah, because I think it's her son.
Her son gets turned, I think. And I think even, I could be wrong, but I think even Daniel Craig gets turned or pretends to get turned. But by the end, the good guys come, and they are able to, I think there's like a voiceover that says, we were able to synthesize the blah, 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 and the blah, blah. And now we're turning everybody back and everybody's back to normal. So it was like,
I think it was the son. There was something in his blood, or like you said, he was infected.
Yeah.
But he didn't turn, and it's like, well, why didn't he turn? So they turned it more from aliens with pods to
like an infection or something, right? Because obviously, if you're replacing somebody's body completely, even in the original, the host body gets destroyed, so you can't undestroy a destroyed body. So this is more of a virus, I guess, or something.
Yeah, a little twist on it, but.
Right.
I always remember we were talking about it before we did the podcast. And going, remember Nicole Kidman was in that remake?
Oh, yeah.
Like, you don't think Nicole Kidman would do something like that, but, it's probably one of her earlier films. We'd have to look it up.
Yeah, I mean, it was in 2007, so it wasn't that long ago. And again, her career it's not one of these careers where she's getting an Oscar every other day and she doesn't have to do these type of films, These guys get work whenever. I mean, Daniel Craig, for crying out loud. I mean, yes, once he started doing the Bond films, his stock went up, so he probably will never have to do a film like this again. But hey, look at Pierce Brosnan, look at these other Bonds before Craig that they're doing all kinds of movies now. They're doing, made-for-cable movies.
Actually, again, folks, looking on IMDb, I take that back. I mean, she did Moulin Rouge and the others, Panic Room, The Hours, and then jumps all the way up. She was in Bewitched, Happy Feet. So she actually did a lot of movies before.
Oh, yeah. She bounces around. She bounces a lot. So it's not, I guess, I mean, like I said, some of these actors, they just want to work and they don't really care how good or bad these films are. But like I said, The Invasion is not, I guess you could consider it the third best one. Body Snatchers is probably the least because it's also a kind of low budget film. So they didn't have a lot of money for it. But I would recommend, and I don't know if you agree with me, Mike, start with the beginning. Hell, start with the book if you want. If you're that type of person, give the book a try because the book, again, it's almost like you're reading the script of the original film and kind of work your way, forward. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the original, I think it was 1994. It was selected to be part of the U.S. National Film Registry, Library of Congress, films to be saved, to be cataloged, for its historical content or whatever. So it's one of these films that after a long time, it is considered to be a classic by different means, not only by critics or by fans, but it gets brought in. And again, a lot of it might be coincidental, the fact that, a lot of people reference it as one of the Red Menace films, the old McCarthy witch trials and all that stuff, even though, again, from what I understand, it wasn't meant to be that. But it's a great film.
It gets just lumped in with all the classic 50s monster movies, them and The Thing from Another World, The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Oh, yeah.
Or War of the Worlds, all those movies that came out at that time. So that's where I think it becomes part of the classic science fiction.
The other thing is that it's also credited or referenced as one of these like horror noirs. In other words, if you remember the crime noir films, a lot of playing with lighting and dark colors and this and that and the other. You're dealing in black and white, obviously. This is a film that doesn't look like your stereotypical 50s monster film. It doesn't look like, the big tarantula coming at you or something like that. And the acting style is not, hey, get me 354 on the line. Hey, sugar, how's it going, sugar? That kind of, the style, the look of the film and the acting style is one notch up in terms of moving the filmmaking process and the acting styles towards a more modern style. So that's why like you mentioned before, I can't really lump it into schlocky 50s sci-fi, horror monster type of thing. This is, as far as I'm concerned, it's maybe for the time it was different. Maybe the fact that they tried to do something a little more high-end, maybe a little artsy, if you will. I think they succeeded for the time. I mean, you're talking about the 50s here, so that's a long time ago. But anyway, I think this is one of these films that every couple of, I don't want to say a couple of years, but I wouldn't be surprised if they take another shot at it. I don't know if they've ever made it into a television series. I'm confused. I think I'm confusing it with War of the Worlds, but I'm surprised they haven't because they've been mining for remakes and reboots out of everything that lives and breathes. I'm shocked that they haven't tried to turn this into an actual television series.
I'm not. I'm not for the fact we never know what's the point, and I never understood even. And I love the original movie. But I don't see the point. They say it's an alien pod that just popped up somewhere. Where did the pods come from? They were growing in a field, if I remember the story right.
Well, in the book, they came from outer space.
Yeah, and what's the same as in the original movie? Yeah. It came from outer space, but these pods were growing. So did they just crash land by meteor, or where's the actual alien? So my whole point is, if that's the basis for what transforms the people, what was the point? Are they trying to take over the world just by cloning everybody?
Yeah, I guess.
I just can't see how you can draw it out to a TV show that's going to be on every week.
Well, that's a tough question, Mike, because you know that Hollywood can take anything and turn it into a TV show, no matter how ridiculous the loophole might be.
Yeah.
But as we mentioned before, with a lot of these films, give it a try. It's almost like you're building a house. If you want to build that house, this is the foundation. And films, like we mentioned, before, you have your Blob, you have the original The Thing. These are the foundations, the building blocks of all this modern horror sci-fi that we're watching today. This is where it all started. And every now and then, I don't know if they've released, this is the type of film that gets re-released so many times and they repackage it. I don't know if they've ever made a Criterion version, but it'd be great to be able to find, and unfortunately, some of these films are so old that they don't, you can't find the material, but it'd be great if they had documentaries of, making ofs. And I heard that there were some commentaries recorded at some point that I don't know if they've ever made it to the light of day. They were recorded, but I don't know if they've ever actually finally got put on a version of the DVD or the Blu-ray. I don't know. From what I read, again, like the aspect ratio of the film had changed during the initial shooting and then the release. So I think they re-released it at some point with a different aspect ratio, which, if you're into that sort of thing, look for it. But yeah, it'd be great if, this is the type of stuff. Unfortunately, if you watch it on Netflix, you don't have access to that, or any type of streaming environment. You don't have access to special features or even the trailers. You can't get that. So, if you want, dig around because maybe it's on some DVD bonus feature or something like that. But I don't know about you, Mike, but I definitely recommend this one.
Yeah, I recommend it. Again, being a classic 50s movie, it's a lot of fun. And besides the fact that the characters, they uncover the plot. Now you want to try and stop the plot. Now they have to survive. And the other thing, too, is they can't fall asleep. Because once you fall asleep, if there's a pod nearby, you'll be turned into an alien. So you have that element sitting there going, how can I stay awake and never fall asleep?
That's a little Nightmare on Elm Street going on there.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's what made it interesting. It made a lot of fun in the original movie in the 50s.
Right.
And watching the 70s, the remake, I always remember watching it and enjoying it. I mean, there was the one time, I think Channel 11, Pix 11 here in New York, used to play that thing every 6 months. It was one of those movies that constantly played over and over and over. And it had Mr. Spock in it.
Yeah. It's a good role for him because he has to flip between a jovial, happy person and completely serious, creepy guy, and it's you can kind of see it's perfect for him because he can kind of do that dual role type of thing.
And the other thing, too, the original succeeded. Again, there was no real special effects.
No, just the only special effects were like the bodies coming out of the pods. There was no like ray guns or explosions or anything fancy like that.
Yeah, I always remember there was a lot of foam, bubbling foam, and they would just pop, and it was like mannequins or something in there, and that was it. But it was a simply shot, like I said, no special effects, per se, but it worked.
It's the story, yeah. The story is what actually, gets you through the film. It's not so much the special effects, that's for sure.
That's what I think in the remake, the third one.
Body Snatchers. Yeah.
I think that's the one, the girl, the main character, Marty Malone.
Yes.
The daughter, I think she was in the bathtub, and then that's when the tentacles,
yeah.
The pod or whatever was there, starts encasing her, and she wakes up.
Pretty gross,
pulls out. It's a little more gross compared to the original.
And because, again, this is an artsy kind of director, this version has a lot more nudity.
Oh, did it?
This is an R-rated one.
Oh, now I'm going to have to go and find it.
You have to find it now.
No, not for the nudity.
Hey,
you should watch it again.
There's something for everybody. You want classic 50s, you want, hippie 70s, you want nudity 90s.
Nudity 90s.
We just coined the phrase.
Well, we had all the sex comedies and Porky's and all. That was what, late 80s?
Yeah, that was the 80s, but this one was 90. Again, I forget the year. I think it was 94 or something. 93, okay. Anyway, I want to, as usual, thank Mike for joining me today, and hopefully we can do another one of these classic films, or even, heck, we'll do a different topic altogether. And I want to thank you guys for joining us, and hope to see you here back soon. So from everybody here at GeekFest Rants, thanks for listening, and bye-bye, everybody.
Pushed on by the solar winds. They adapt, and they survive. The function of all life is survival. Sleep, sleep, sleep. From deep space, sleep, sleep. The seed is planted. Sleep, sleep. Terror grows. Sleep.
Matthew! Matthew!
Like the others.
Elizabeth, wake up! Get you when you sleep. Sit up!
Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
It's got no detail, no character. It's unformed.
All of a sudden, they're growing like parasites. Is it contagious? People are being duplicated.
How do you know my name? I didn't tell you my name.
Can't find anything in here that looks like a body.
One side's nosebleed.
It looked right at me.
You're looking at it as if it was human. It was not human.
Now, the classic fear begins to grow.
We're being cornered.
In a modern masterpiece of science fiction.
They're barricading the street.
Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Get down.
Starring Donald Sutherland, Brooke Adams, Leonard Nimoy. Invasion of the Body Snatchers. From deep space, the seed is planted. Terror grows.
Hey, sugar, how's it going?